no mention in that letter of as you put it, porneia, or the child sexual abuse, and is that because BCH didn't tell you about it?
They're right. Yes.
So are we to understand that at that stage the appeal committee findings had not been conveyed to you?
Well, if they had, I'm pretty sure they must have been conveyed to it, because the first meeting where this BCH came to my attention, it was mentioned of what he'd done, the porneia and the slander. So it must have been mentioned for it to come up in that meeting, yeah.
Well, where does it come up? With reference to what are you saying that it came up in that meeting, in what you call your first meeting?
Well, this is a matter where there's three brothers. The information was brought verbally to the meeting, the whole body of elders, before we established the committee, what BCH, who he was, he's making a plea for reinstatement, and then it was also brought out, as I mentioned in my statement, that he was disciplined for it, disfellowshipped, and I'm absolutely sure it was mentioned that he faced the authorities as well for it, and went to jail. But obviously this didn't happen at that time.
Yes. Perhaps if we look at tab 9, do you have that? That's
Yes.
a report on the reinstatement plea by BCH, and it's also signed by each of the elders at Beamley East.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that document?
Yes.
And you see it sets out what happened. First contacted us February 21, 1990 at Kingdom Hall, spoke to Rod Spinks, given contact in, and it's redacted, but it says Mariba congregation, as Brother Ron DeRoy, and that's his address has been redacted, of Mariba. Rod Spinks contacted DeRoy to determine nature of problem and inform case very complex, and that BCH had recently applied elsewhere for reinstatement. And then the committee, being yourself and Mrs. Spinks and Johnson, met with BCH on the 6th of March 1990, and it outlines what his statement was. And if you just have a look through that, you'll see right down to the end of that paragraph where it says BCH reasons for disfellowshipping, lying and disregarding theocratic order. So is it not the case that that's where you got up to when you sent the previous letter we were looking at? You then sent a letter asking for clarification.
The focus that was brought to the attention of the meeting of the elders in Bentley was of his lying and loose conduct. Now, you will see later on in the letters that come up that BCH complains to the Watchtower Society about the Bentley elders requiring a point-by-point confession of what he had done wrong. You see, part of the reinstatement process, or the qualifications to be reinstated, is that a person acknowledges their wrongdoing. Now, if he was unable to, if we had to extract his real wrongdoing out of him, then we had to do it on a point-by-point basis. And that's why we got a letter back from the Watchtower Society saying there's no need for us to, rake over old coals, or go by point-by-point confession of the wrongdoing. But because of his obfuscation, we felt the need that he had to bring it out. And he was reluctant to bring it out all through his, from the letter that I've seen of the person who's the victim, he still wouldn't acknowledge what he had done.
Yes, Mr. Baker. Now, this particular document is dated 15 June 1990. Do you see that at the end?
Which one is that?
Tab 9.
Tab 9. Where's the date on that?
At the end, just above the signatures.
Oh, okay.
Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes, and so this is the record of your decision and the reasons for it not to agree to the request for reinstatement. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you recorded in the last paragraph, you say, at this point we have told BCH that we wish to have no further contact with him as he has continued to approach us with little or no indication that he has changed his view of the discipline. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, when I have a look at the reasons that you give here, I see no mention other than a mention of porneia, I see no mention in your reasoning of the child sexual abuse. Are you able to explain that?
Well, our primary focus at the time was his continuing to make overtures to the person for which he was originally disfellowshipped. We felt it was still going on. Yes. So we focused on that, but at the same time, with regard to the porneia as mentioned, as I said earlier, we did press it with him, and he refused. He always tried to diminish that part of his wrongdoing. But I think we might have dropped the ball there by not actually mentioning it with regard to his our decision.
Could I just draw Councillor Sisting's attention to the second last paragraph where there is some discussion of a denial of any incest? That's if I'm on the right document. Am I not on the right document? Yes.
I don't see it, but I've misread documents before.
First page.
He denied incest. That's what's being referred to.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it's being pointed out to me, Mr. Baker, that there is one reference where it says he denied incest. But as you've given evidence, your principal concern was this potential adulterous relationship, wasn't it?
That was our focus at the time. We thought that the whole incest matter had been thoroughly dealt with by the Mariba congregation. I'm not trying to pass responsibility or I'm not trying to diminish our responsibility, but we thought at that time the whole matter regarding the incest had been established. That's why later on we had to get it out of him again, and we were mildly chastised for it.
So, Mr. Baker, when you say it had been established, what you and I are seeking or needing to do is to establish whether he was repentant in relation to it. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And your focus here, though, seems to be rather in relation to the potential adultery, suggesting that that was seen as more important than the child sexual abuse, or am I misunderstanding it?
No, that's not correct. If you look at the statement I made right at the outset, there was a concern among the body of elders as to the welfare of the abused, because apparently her own mother was not supporting her. Her father was the violator, and we did have real concern. And in fact, I'm quite sure we raised the question as to the welfare of the victim.
All right, Mr. Baker, perhaps we can move on to the next request. If you have a look at tab 10, and that's actually a letter from Beanley East, signed by you as committee chairman. I suppose by then you had taken over the chairmanship of that judicial committee, had you?
Yes, it appears that way.
And attached to it is a letter that you had received some months earlier from BCH, is that right?
Yes.
And if you see the date of BCH's letter is September 1990, you see that the date of your letter, 19 March 1990, must be wrong. It must be 1991. Do you accept that?
Yes, there's been a mistake.
Yes.
And probably 91.
Yes, well, we can see that from the reply to that letter, which is at tab 11, which is on 6 April 1991. Now, you record there that you have made further investigations about whether BCH was having any further communications with the other woman, is that right?
Yes.
And you were concerned about the relatively short period of time since the previous reinstatement request had been declined.
Yes.
And you do not express any concern about the child sexual abuse. Did you consider it at all?
Yes. Once again, I feel I may have dropped the ball there because we honestly thought it was fully dealt with by the congregation that handled that matter. And that's how it was.
You know, are you saying, Mr. Baker, that it's not the case that this potential consensual extramarital contact between BCH and another woman was taken to be more serious than the child sexual abuse?
At that particular time, that was the focus. Yes, I would say it wasn't more serious, because as I've already stated, we're of the opinion that the matter with regard to his abuse had been settled. The fact that there's no letters from Marita that I can recall stating anything to do with the child abuse. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any letters that I'm aware of.
Although you did know, from what you said to us earlier, as I understood it, that one of the reasons he had been disfellowshipped was under the label porneia for sexual abuse of his daughter. So you were aware of it.
Yes, we were aware of it.
And being aware of it, you would have had to have been satisfied that he had repented in relation to it before you could recommend reinstatement. Would that be right?
Yes.
And it would then have been something that one would have expected that you would investigate in your consideration of the reinstatement request.
Well, I guess we would have got on to that, having felt that the matter was handled. There was much obfuscation on his part and diminishing that aspect of it. So whenever it came up, he tended to gloss over it and move on to the next point. I don't want to assign any motives, but he was very clever at that.
Do you have tab 11 there, Mr. Baker? Do you have
yes.
tab 11? So the letter dated 6 April 1991 from Mariba to Beanley East. Do you have that?
Yes.
And so you may take some comfort from the fact that in that letter, which is nearly 3 pages, the Mariba congregation does not, in writing to you, raise the child sexual abuse as an issue. Looking back on it now, does that strike you as odd?
Without putting the Mariba brothers in a bad light. And in hindsight, yes, it strikes me as odd.
And then at tab 12, you'll see you received a further letter from BCH seeking to justify reinstatement. You have that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And at tab 14, you received a letter from the branch, in other words, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia, dated 12 July.
Yes.
You were still dealing with the matter at that stage, I take it. left in 1993, as I recall.
Yes, yes, that's right.
And so you would have been presiding overseer at Beanley East at that time, July 1991.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Essentially, that letter from the branch advised that you should meet with BCH and give him some direction towards possible reinstatement in the future. Do you see that?
Yes.
And did you do that? Did you meet with BCH?
Yes.
And I take it you were not satisfied as to his repentance at that stage?
That's correct.
And you have
In fact, at any point in time,
yes. And at
while I was still there.
and then you, at tab 15, do you have that? You received, did you, a further letter? I beg your pardon, you sent a further letter to the Judicial Committee at Mariba,
Yes.
dated 14 August 1991.
Yes.
And you will see in the 6th paragraph, the one beginning with subsequently, we had another meeting with BCH
Yes.
on the 7th of August. You raised the question of lying. In the next paragraph, you raised the question of the other woman. And in the next paragraph, starting sadly, you raised the question of Pornier with his daughter as established by the appeal committee.
Yes.
And the outcome of that was that you were still not satisfied with regard to repentance. Is that right?
Yes. I think he felt that the Beanley elders were an obstacle for him to being reinstated.
And at 16, is that, do you have tab 16? It's not actually signed by you. It's just apparently from your brother's Beanley East congregation, and it's directed to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society at Ingleburn. Is that a letter that came from you and the fellow members of your committee?
Yes. Paragraph 3, I mentioned he still refuses to acknowledge the porneia he committed with his daughters.
Yes. And then at tab 18, you'll see the branch office replied. And in the 3rd paragraph, they said, regarding the offences with this teenage daughter, we understand you have information from the elders in Mariba on this matter. Mr. BCH says he's willing to go to Mariba to meet with the elders there if need be. This would be a personal decision. I take it you received that letter, did you?
Yes.
You see at the top of the letter it's got a reference SD, which I understand to be service desk, and then after that it says SSA. Do you know what that represents?
Well, SD I understood to be the service desk. The SSA, I don't know, Secret Service Agent.
I take it.
I don't know.
I take it you weren't being serious about that, Mr. Baker.
No, I'm sorry.
That's all right. And then at tab 19, you, as I understand it, reply and set out another decision with regard to not reinstating. Is that right?
Yes. Understating wherever possible the gravity of the wrongs for which he is disfellowshipped.
And to understand that by this time he had moved on to St. George, is that right?
Yes. That's about the time that I exit the scene. But I do recall St. George contacting me. And once again, there was what appears to be an untruth made.
Yes, and at tab 20 there seems to be, I think, a reference from that. That's,
In the third paragraph down?
that's a letter that you weren't party to, of course. It was from St. George to Mariba, is that right?
Yes.
But it says that in fourth paragraph, in talking to Brother Monty Baker from Beanley, he mentioned that they too felt that his conduct of late met with their approval, and they were contemplating a favourable recommendation too. Now, what is your response to that?
I question who the he is. It says, in talking to Brother Baker from Beanley, he mentioned that they too felt that his conduct of late was meeting with his approval. Now, who mentioned that? Me? Or was it BCH's talking to me?
Well, I suggest, Mr. Baker, on the ordinary reading of it, it would be a reference to you, but what are you saying in relation to that you did not mention that position? In other words, you did not say that it met with the approval of Beanley.
I seem to recall having a phone call. Oh, it's so far back now. And I might have said something along the lines, he's showing all the outward signs. But I think I do put a caveat on it. In earlier letters, saying, we still have this nagging doubt in our minds. He vehemently denied until recently that he interfered with his daughters. Just trying to find.
So are you saying you don't recall ever reaching the position?
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.